into the video. Y'all already know what's happening. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Hit that post notification bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a video. But let's get straight into this video. The Phoenix Suns did the most shocking thing ever, and they got swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I did not expect them to get swept. They could have lost this series, and 6 or 7. I did not expect it to go to 4 games and them to get a total of 0 wins this postseason. Especially when you take into consideration the fact that they swept the T-Wolves in the regular season 3-0. They beat them every single time they played them. But this Phoenix Suns team was doomed ever since they pretty much traded for Bradley Beal. And now they can't even get rid of Bradley Beal because, he has a no trade clause. So they can't even get rid of him. If they want to get rid of him, he has to consent to it. And that probably won't happen. So they can't even get rid of him, and all that money he's making, they can't do it. They just can't do it. They're stuck with this big three for the next few years. Really no draft picks, no depth. They really have no depth. That was another problem. And you have to blame somebody for for you being trash, for you underperforming. And we're seeing all these reports coming out about KD not liking his role with the team, and Frank Vogel wasn't a good coach. And now his job is on the line for unknown reasons. You hired a defensive-minded coach and put him with 3 ISO players. You put him with 3 of the best scorers in the league, and you expected him to know what to do with them offensively, and then you didn't have a defense either. You had some good defensive players. Nurkic, for sure, is a good defensive player. You had someone like Kevin Durant, who was good at defense, but other than that, you really didn't have a good defensive team. You weren't going to be an elite defense, and you weren't going to be an elite offense either. Why? Because you hired a coach who's not bad, by the way. Who's not bad. I don't think he's the problem. I see people blaming him. Like I said, they got to blame somebody. Blame the front office. Blame the owner. Don't blame the head coach of the Phoenix Suns, because he was just doing his job. That's all he was doing. But like I said, the Phoenix Suns done ruined their future. They really ruined their future. They had a bright future. They had that amazing run in the bubble when they went 8-0, and then they went and traded for Chris Paul, became the 2nd seed in the West, I believe, and then they went on to the NBA Finals. They had an amazing run, went to the NBA Finals, were up 2-0, almost won the Finals, and then Giannis just turned into Giannis. He turned into an absolute wrecking ball and just wrecked them for 4 straight wins. And so then after that collapse happened, the next year they won 64 games, I believe. They were the best team in the NBA. They had a scary first round series against the New Orleans Pelicans, but then they ended up playing Dallas in the second round of the playoffs, and it went to 7, and in game 7 they absolutely got clapped. Like, they got clapped. And once they got clapped, they never recovered from that. I just want to note that. They never recovered from that. And Chris Paul hit a shot to take the lead to 30-something points. It was crazy. That game was crazy. And so, to me, I feel like they panicked. Not every year you're going to make it to the finals in your prime, unless your name is the Golden State Warriors or any team LeBron James was on from that period in the East. I think it was 2011 to 2018 where you went to the finals every year. Yeah, unless you're the Warriors and you're LeBron. If when you're in your prime, you're not going to go to the finals every single year. And I do feel like they overreacted. So then, they were just okay. They were above 500. They were a mid-team, the next year. And at the trade deadline, they decided to trade Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and draft compensation, what ended up being a 2023 first-round pick, 2025, 2027, 2029, a first-round pick swap in 2028 for Phoenix, and then they also got Kevin Durant and TJ Warren. And the Nets also acquired a second-round draft pick in 2020 from Milwaukee that night. So that was when they decided to trade away Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. And they had a nice team. It had Chris Paul at that point, Devin Booker, a good 3-and-D guy in Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, and then they also had Jay Crowder. They had a nice little team going. Even Cameron Payne was doing his thing. And so this was a nice little team. And then they trade for KD, and right away you hear people, oh, this is their year. They're going to the finals. This, that, and the third. So then they traded for KD. Would I have traded for KD personally at that point in his career? Absolutely not. And there's nothing against KD. It's just that if I have a young up and coming team and they already made it to the finals, I just want to stick with that team. That's just me personally. I would have just stuck with the team. However, they clearly didn't do that, and I feel like they panicked. But that's not when they panicked the most. We'll get to when they panicked the most in a second. However, they didn't do anything in the playoffs. They won in the first round, of course. However, they didn't reach the heights that they thought they will reach, which is winning the NBA Finals. They didn't even make it to the finals. They didn't even make it to the conference finals. They got it handed to them by the Nuggets in 6 and got blown out on their home floor. So then that offseason, I thought they would make some moves to shake up the roster a little bit, get some more depth. But then they do the dumbest thing they could have possibly did. And they traded all their depth away for Bradley Beal. They traded a second-round pick in 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2030, first-round pick swaps in 2024, 2026, 2028, and 2030. And then they traded away Cash, Larry Schmidt, and Chris Paul to receive Isaiah Todd, Josh Goodwin, and Bradley freaking Beal. That's the trade they did. That is the trade they pulled off. I was like, oh my Lord, the defense on this team is going to be terrible. And the depth. But then they went and solved the depth problem. They traded DeAndre Ayton, and they ended up getting Nurkic, who helped out with the defense. And they went and they got some bench player people, like Eric Gordon, for example. So you take all this into account. Going in, you know what, they might be fine. Devin Booker's going to play point guard. They never signed a point guard. I meant to mention that too. They never signed a point guard. Like, they really never did. They never signed a point guard. And it's such a shame because you could tell that they really needed a point guard. Like, you could really, really tell that they needed a point guard. But guess what? They never got a point guard. Someone to put in the ball, like late in games, to help create plays for others. They didn't do that. And apparently the head coach wanted to do that, but he was told no because it would that would take the ball out of the hands of Booker, Beal, and KD. They wouldn't have it, and one of them wouldn't have it in their hands at all times or something crazy. So we fast forward, and there's a lot of issues with this team, but you know what? They can score. They can score. That's the main thing. You know what? We'll see what they're capable to do. Well, we didn't get to see it until December because Bradley Beal got hurt, and then Devin Booker got hurt, and then Kevin Durant got hurt. And the problem with this team is, they also went out and got Grayson Allen too. But the problem with the this team in particular with me, is the simple fact that if one of these people got hurt on their bench or in the starting lineup, they was cooked. That's really how it felt because of how thin the roster was. And Grayson Allen got hurt in the playoffs, and that proved my point. They was cooked with death after that. They was really cooked. But it took them all the way to, I believe, December. I don't know the exact date, but it took them all the way to December, to the Big Three, to finally, click up and play together. And guess what? They lost. So you fast forward to the end of the year. They done had their ups and downs. They completely dominate the T-Wolves in the regular season. And you have all these people saying, oh, you want to play the T-Wolves or the Suns because they're the easiest teams to beat in the playoffs this year because of their young, inexperienced, this, that, and the third. Well, that turned out to be absolutely false for the Phoenix Suns. They got swept 4-0 by the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just want to share something with y'all real quick. That throughout the whole playoffs, Durant, Beal, Booker this postseason, negative 51 plus minus went on the floor today. Minus 51, y'all. Hang on. Minus 51 when they are on the floor together. That's the worst of any trio this postseason. And then Bradley Beal had the dirty nerve to say when they went down 3-0, oh, I've never been swept before in my life. You barely made the playoffs in your career, my guy. That's not a flex. That is not a flex. That, like LeBron, for example, him saying he had never got eliminated the first round until Phoenix did, that was impressive. But this little line you pulled was not impressive, especially after you say that and you go and drop 9 points. You dropped 9 points. Kevin Durant had a fairly good series. He wasn't horrible. He wasn't terrible. He's not the Kevin Durant of old, but he still, had a decent series. It wasn't bad. Devin Booker finally went off and scored 49 points. He said, no, I'm not going home. Bradley Beal, like I said, scored 9 points. And he had like 6 turnovers. And even though Eric Gordon had 6 points, he did better. He did better than Bradley Beal did, and that's the truth. But we got to shout out the Minnesota Timberwolves. Shout out McDaniels, Gobert, Conley, Alexander Walker, Reed, Anderson. We got to shout out the head coach of that team. And we got to shout out Anthony Edwards, y'all. We got to shout out Anthony Edwards, y'all. You want to know why? Because Anthony Edwards is the mother freaking GOAT of this Minnesota team, y'all. He is a leader. He is so humble. He told him, he said, I told Cat, you got to stop fouling, man. Stop fouling, man. We need you. We play better. We're not going to be able to win game 4 unless we have the best version of you. And we can't have the best version of you if you're fouling and in foul trouble, buddy. And that leadership he showed, the poise he showed. And even though he started off the game, a little rocky, he ended with 40 points and went on a tear that second half to close out the series. And he's been exploding this whole entire series. They said Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns wouldn't work. Well, guess what? They are working. And they're the only team that I believe can go toe-to-toe and blow for blow with the mother freaking Denver Nuggets. They're going to give Denver a run for their money. Trust and believe me, they're going to give Denver a run for their money. This team is good defensively. They were explosive, especially Anthony Edwards was explosive on offense. They have the defensive player of the year, and they showed the Suns that, hey, you're not going to beat us. It's a new guard. It's a new era, and that's all that this really was. This whole playoffs is showing us that it's a new era in the NBA. It's time for the new guys to step up and for the older fellas to take a back seat. We're not learning that, then I don't know what else to say if you didn't get that message, if you didn't get that memo, because that's clearly what's happening. Anthony Edwards said his favorite player was Kevin Durant, and now look, he's sending him home. He swept him. And the Suns, I don't know where they go from here. They making over $100 and something million combined, the big three. I don't know what much they can do with the current roster they have. They clearly need depth. They need defense. There's a lot of stuff that is needed for this team. And you cannot trade Bradley Beal, who I think out of everyone should get traded, because he's not doing anything. He's honestly not doing anything. This was a good idea in their head. Actually, this wasn't even a good idea in their head. This was a terrible idea from the jump. You were going to have a lack of roster, even though they tried their best to fill it. But if one person got hurt, you were screwed. You had a lack of a roster. You had lack of depth. You had a lack of defense. And then your team is injury prone. Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, they've been dealing with injuries for forever now. And then you didn't even get to play the big three together until December. That's just absolutely bananas to me. And it's just crazy how people actually hyped up this Phoenix Suns team. People actually thought that they would beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's crazy to me how that actually happened. And then at the end of the day, Minnesota showed just how good they are. Because this was a really good performance by the Minnesota Timberwolves and such a terrible performance by the Phoenix Suns. You got no draft picks, got no depth, got no trade leverage. It's absolutely nothing you could do, because your dummies allowed Bradley Beal to have a no trade clause. No trade clause. And just remember, he never got swept before this, and he put up 9 points. He said, I never got swept before in my life, and you put up 9 points when it matters the most. You do that. And like I said, I think this team overreacted. I understand why they traded for KD. They had some depth issues when they traded for KD. But then they traded Chris Paul away, which I don't think personally they should have did. I really didn't think. But then I thought they was doing it to clear up space so they could go get Depp. And no, they added a third star. They panicked and added a third star, which was unnecessary. And this kind of reminds me of when the Los Angeles Lakers traded for Westbrook instead of Buddy Hield. And instead of Buddy Hield, you're going to trade for a person that during the playoffs the year before, you just, when they was left open for three. Is that really what we're doing here? That's really what they decided to do. The Lakers, they decided to go and trade for Westbrook, and the Phoenix Suns decided to go and trade for Bradley Beal. And both of those were overreactions, and both of those were really bad mistakes that they shouldn't have did. And I say blame the front office because it's their fault. They're the reason why they're in this mess. Mostly the owner. I'm going to blame the owner too. James Jones, you can blame him a little bit, but I don't think he would have did this if they had their old owners or if it was up to him. I really don't think he would have did this, but they desperately wanted to win a ring now. And sometimes when you want to win a ring now, you do stupid things like trade all your draft picks away. But if you're going to do that, at least make sure you have a good roster and you're able to be flexible and able to actually win the title like the Rams did. They're screwed for a few years, but guess what? They still got that ring. You're not them. You're not going to get that ring. You never will. You want to know why? Because you got the Timberwolves, the Pelicans in there emerging. OKC who emerged. You got all these up-and-coming teams. You got the Nuggets. You got Joker still. You got the Clippers. You got all the Grizzlies for next year. You got all these teams to worry about in the West. You really do. And it's just, like I said, very unfortunate what happened to the Phoenix Suns. They were on a trajectory to be good for years to come, contend for years to come, and they blew it all up. Like I said, I understand the Kevin Durant trade, and I'm going to let that slide. However, that Bradley Beal trade was the final nail in the coffin because you had too many issues that you were not going to be able to address. You never signed a proper point guard. You never fixed the depth problem. You tried to, but it wasn't fixed fully because if one person got hurt, it was doomed, and then you had no defense. And then you hired a defensive coach and gets mad because they didn't average 200 points, or he didn't use KD correctly, he didn't use the offense correctly, and he didn't have them playing elite defense. How is he supposed to do the offense as a defensive coach? And how is he supposed to have an elite defense with no elite defensive players? Come on, y'all. But like I said, it's always going to be a fall guy, and it looks like it's going to be Vogel. It really does. And he does not deserve to get fired. If he does deserve to get fired, it's absolutely crazy and insane to me because the person who needs to get blamed the most, front office, the ownership, that's who needs to get blamed the most. Then he gets some blame too. Frank Vogel, he should get some blame too. I'm not going to act like and sit here and act like he's a perfect coach, but he's not the problem. And then Bradley Beal. After that comment he made, that smart ass comment talking about I never got started and then dropped 9 points. You deserve to get traded, but you can't. You can't. They can't cut you too much money. They can't trade you. They just stuck. They're just stuck in limbo unless they come up with some brilliant plan. But that's it. That's my little rant about the Phoenix Suns. Once again, shout out to Minnesota Timberwolves, and you had such a great year. And I can't wait to continue seeing you improve. And like I said, you're going to give the Denver Nuggets a run for their money. In Phoenix, you just disappointed a whole lot of people this year. But that's it for me. Until next time, y'all. Stephen Connor out. Peace.